Welcome to the Explainer. Let's just dive right into it. Today we're doing an ultimate rapid-fire exam review of the notorious 100-day cough, pertussis. Look, if you're prepping for your medical boards, you already know Harrison's is the gold standard, right? And Chapter 165, it is absolutely packed with testable material. So we're going to extract the absolute highest yield notes from that chapter to secure you those crucial test points. No fluff, just the facts you actually need to know. To keep this efficient, we're breaking this pathogen down into 5 highly testable buckets. We've got microbiology and key toxins, the 3 clinical phases, nailing the diagnosis, treatment and complications, and we'll wrap it up with high-yield memory aids. Section 1, Microbiology and Key Toxins. Let's look at the bug itself. Meet Bordetella pertussis. It's a gram-negative, pleomorphic, aerobic bacillus. But here's the absolute critical takeaway for your exams. It is extremely fastidious, and it is incredibly slow-growing. Think of it as this super needy, human-only pathogen that demands highly selective media to grow in the lab. We're talking Bordetella gangau medium, which is a potato blood agar, or Regan-Low medium. Seriously, if you see either of those names in a question stem, your brain needs to immediately jump to pertussis. Now let's break down this bug's arsenal, because examiners love this stuff. The absolute highest yield virulence factor, the one that shows up on previous year questions all the time, is the pertussis toxin, or PT. What does it do? It ADP ribosylates G proteins. That action leads to a massive lymphocytosis and totally impairs phagocytic function. But, it doesn't work alone. It uses filamentous hemagglutinin and protactin as adhesins just to stick to your cells. Then you have tracheal cytotoxin, which literally damages the ciliated respiratory epithelium, and adenylate cyclase hemolysin, which further messes up those phagocytes. Oh, and a quick side note, Bordetella pertussis, a related bug, actually causes a much milder illness. Why? Because it completely lacks that crucial pertussis toxin gene. Section 2. The 3 clinical phases. The clinical presentation for this disease follows a really predictable, classic rule of 3 sequence. It starts with step 1, the catarrhal phase. This lasts about 1 to 2 weeks, and honestly, it looks exactly like a common viral cold. Nothing crazy. But then it escalates into step 2, the severe paroxysmal phase. That lasts 2 to 4 weeks and is characterized by these incredibly violent coughing bursts. Finally, we hit step 3, the convalescent phase. This part drags on for 1 to 3 months as the cough slowly fades away. You add all that time up, and well, that's exactly how it gets its famous nickname, the 100-day cough. You'll really want to take a mental screenshot of this breakdown because contrasting the contagion levels and lab findings across these 3 phases, yeah, that's almost guaranteed to show up on your exam. Notice that the catarrhal phase is actually the most contagious period. It's also the best time to get a positive culture, even though the patient just looks like they have a super mild cold. Then, as we shift into the paroxysmal phase, bam, those coughing bursts hit. We're talking 5 to 10 coughs per expiration, often followed by that classic whoop sound and post-tussive vomiting. This is also the exact window where lymphocytosis peaks and where most of your major complications are going to occur. By the time the patient reaches the convalescent phase, your cultures are typically going to be negative, so at that point you'll need to rely on serology to actually confirm the diagnosis. Okay, I want to highlight a massive clinical trap right here. That classic inspiratory whoop everyone talks about, yes, it's highly prominent in children, but it is often completely absent in infants under 6 months of age and absent in adolescents and adults too. Seriously, do not rule out pertussis in a test vignette just because the examiner didn't mention a whoop in a newborn or an adult patient. It's a huge trap. Moving on to Section 3, nailing the diagnosis. When it comes to proving this bug is the culprit, you essentially have a diagnostic showdown. On one side, you've got the culture on Bordetella gangau or Regan-Low media. Now, this is your theoretical gold standard purely because it is 100% specific, but it's really slow and it only stays positive for about 3 weeks from symptom onset. On the other side, you have PCR. PCR is way more sensitive, significantly faster, and as a bonus, it can actually differentiate Bordetella pertussis from other species like Pertussis and Holmesii. And definitely don't forget the practical details here. The absolute best sample to collect is a nasopharyngeal aspiration. You want to use a fine, flexible catheter with gentle suction, not just a regular old swab. Also, if you spot an absolute lymphocytosis in a young child's lab results, that is a characteristic hallmark of this disease. It's highly unusual with other childhood respiratory infections, so if you see it, it should be a massive red flag for pertussis on your boards. Section 4, Treatment and Complications. Pay close attention because this is perhaps the single most important concept in the entire explainer. We give macrolide antibiotics to eradicate the organism from the nasopharynx, right? But the goal there is to eliminate transmission. These antibiotics do not significantly alter the clinical course of the cough itself, unless you manage to start them super early in the catarrhal phase. Basically, macrolides will stop the spread, but they aren't going to stop the cough if those toxins have already done their damage. So what's the actual protocol? The preferred treatment is azithromycin for 5 days. We like it mostly because it has fewer side effects. If your patient has an allergy, trimethoprim sulfamethoxazole is your solid backup. But here's the catch. Treating the index case isn't enough. You absolutely must proactively give chemoprophylaxis. Again, a macrolide, to every single household contact within 21 days of the cough onset. And yes, you do this regardless of their immunization status. Oh, and a quick tip for both the wards and your exams. Don't bother with cough suppressants. They are completely ineffective here. 84%. Just let that number sink in for a second. That staggering figure represents the percentage of all pertussis deaths in the USA that occur in infants under 2 months old. It's devastating, but this disease is an absolute killer for those youngest, most vulnerable patients. These high-risk infants are usually hospitalized due to severe, literally life-threatening complications. Apnea, for instance, occurs in nearly 30% of hospitalized infants under 2. Pneumonia is also super common, but what's truly terrifying are the neurological events. We're talking seizures and encephalopathy. Now, interestingly, these aren't generally direct effects of the toxin itself. Instead, they're caused by sheer hypoxia. It's the literal lack of oxygen happening during those relentless coughing fits. Tragically, when deaths do occur in young infants, they are very closely associated with profound leukocytosis and pulmonary hypertension. So because infants under 2 months are so incredibly vulnerable and way too young to get their own primary vaccine series, maternal vaccination is basically our most effective shield. Giving the Tdap vaccine to mothers between 27 and 36 weeks of every single pregnancy provides this incredible passive immunity. We're talking 90 to 93% effectiveness at protecting those newborns. After that window, kids get 5 doses of DTaP, and adolescents and adults get their Tdap boosters. Also, and this is a great test question, contrary to what people used to believe, immunity after a natural infection is not lifelong. It definitely wanes over time. Section 5. High-yield memory aids. We've covered a ton of ground, so let's lock this all into your brain with some rapid-fire mnemonics to guarantee your recall on test day. First up, to remember the exact progression of the illness, just think CPC. The first C stands for catarrhal, think common cold, and remember it's the most contagious phase. Then P stands for paroxysmal. That's the phase with the powerful cough, post-tussive vomiting, and the famous whoop. And finally, the last C stands for convalescent. That's where the cough is finally fading over months. Next, let's tackle the toxin. Just connect PT for pertussis toxin directly with the phrase pro-T cells. Doing this will instantly remind you that this specific toxin is what drives that characteristic profound lymphocytosis, all by ADP ribylating the G protein. It's an absolutely key lab finding that sets this bacterial infection apart from the rest. For diagnosis, mentally link nasopharyngeal aspiration and PCR together. Those are your absolute best, most practical clinical tools when you need speed and sensitivity. But you still have to respect Bordetella gangomedium as the theoretical gold standard because of its 100% specificity. If a board question tries to trick you by asking for the best initial test versus the gold standard, well, now you know exactly how to differentiate them. And finally, you really need to anchor this exact timeline in your mind. Maternal Tdap at 27 to 36 weeks, protecting that highly vulnerable under 2-month window with maternal antibodies. That is exactly what the examiners want you to prioritize. It is the single most important intervention for preventing pertussis mortality. So we've thoroughly mastered the high-yield exam material, but looking a little bit beyond the test, considering that natural immunity wanes and that this bug is actively evolving, we're seeing the emergence of protactin-negative strains dodging our acellular vaccines in over 80% of cases in some countries. It really makes you wonder, what is the next chapter of this clinical battle actually going to look like? Will our current vaccine strategies hold up? Or is this 100-day pathogen already a step ahead of us? Keep that in the back of your mind as you head to the wards. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and hey, happy studying!